Hey guys, welcome back to ShedCam, and today I'm bringing you another video of my little 125cc quad here. If you saw the latest video, I'll put a link to it just up there. You'll see I went over, sort of explained what happened to this. Pretty much, do a quick rundown. The back axle is absolutely stuffed, so I've taken it upon myself to fully restore this entire build. I'm going to do a few modifications, try and make this a sports bike, like a proper, decent race bike. Try and adjust the suspension and modify it to try and get this thing into a decent spec racing bike. Now, it's going to be a bit interesting. I know I won't get anywhere near sort of those high competition bikes, but the plan is to just improve on the original frame to make this thing more of a small performance bike rather than just a kid's quad bike. Right, so you're probably thinking, how on earth am I going to turn this into a sports bike given with what I have? Now, the plan is to implement these swing arms, both front, got the front over there, and the rear, including the axle. And now these axles and swing arms are all off a 250 sports bike. So the plan is to modify this frame to take this along with on the front here. Got some longer front swing arms compared to the old ones. They're a fair bit wider. So hopefully this will widen my track, giving me a lot more stability, meaning I'll be able to corner faster, probably pull a few drifts without rolling it. So yeah, that is the main plan. Also going to have to do a fair bit to this engine. I'm going to do a full engine rebuild. However, depending on the condition of this engine, say for example the bore or the piston is badly damaged, or there's scoring on the cylinder wall, sort of stuff like that, where I'm going to have to spend like say $200 to replace the entire top end, including maybe some bottom end damage, or if there's gearbox damage, something like that, I may end up having to just leave the engine. And if we do that, we could chuck this engine in. Let me just go over there and show you. Here's the second option engine. This is a 200cc water-cooled engine. See here all the water cooling components on that. It's got a 4-speed with reverse manual gearbox, different to the other one because that one there is a 3-speed with a semi-auto clutch, whereas this is a manual, which isn't a too big a difference. This is probably a bit better for the track. Only problem is this engine from the top here to the bottom of this magneto cover here, that measures 40 centimeters, whereas on the engine, I'll just scoot back over there. So in order to fit that engine in here, measuring to the top, that engine, just get the tape measure out a bit more. If we come 40 centimeters right to the bottom there, just to sit in line with the frame, my engine's going to sit that high, and that interferes with my fuel tank, because my fuel tank sits on top here and it sort of just sits all in this area here. I don't know how much clearance I have up the top there. I wager it's not enough, which means if I'm going to fit that engine in here, I'm going to have to move the fuel tank. So I'm going to go ahead and get started working on this. I'm going to start off by just pulling all the body off so that I can get a good look at the frame, and then I'll be able to get some measurements so that I can adapt these new suspension components into the frame and get an idea for where we're going from there. So let's get wrenching. Right, so we got the body off. Now we can really see sort of the condition of the frame. Things I've noticed, small stuff that's really broken that I've noticed, and big stuff as well. Noticed stuff like this. That's all, the welds have broken off that real bracket. But also that's not just poor wiring, that's to do with the fact that when this swing arm broke, this tow hitch smashed straight up into this headlight. You can see where it's just smashed into there. So yeah, small thing. There's a crack in the frame right here. You can see there where the rust is starting to form. It's sort of cracked all the way around. So that's not a big deal. This is all going to get cut out when I try to install this big swing arm over here. Aside from that, there's no other major cracks that I've seen. All of the frame on the top here seems really good condition, aside from a bit of dirt. Same on this side. There's not a whole lot of damage. Seems all in fairly good condition, aside from, yeah, being dirty, being used. So yeah, this is the frame itself. It's fairly good. The rear swing arm, on the other hand, that's the big thing. That's the big reason this is all getting rebuilt. Next, I'll probably pull all the suspension off, along with the wiring harness. I will continue to work on this. The next time I see you, this should pretty much just be a frame. Let's get working. Okay, so we have got majority of this thing sort of disassembled aside from the engine and suspension now. Just got a few electrical bits like tail lights, brake switches to come off, along with the brake lines and the throttle cable. And then from there, remove exhaust system and intake, then remove the engine, then the front and rear swing arms, and we should be down to the frame, ready for some modification. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Pretty much all disassembled now. Just the engine left in the frame. Front suspension and the rear suspension has all been taken off, along with pretty much everything else on this frame. Having a look, we can see that I've bent this steering shaft here. That's no longer straight, so I'm going to have to probably reinforce this steering shaft when I do the reinforcements. Okay, so I've got the 200cc engine mock fitted in the engine frame right here, and it is kind of possible to mount this in here. I could do it. All that I got to do is cut out this existing engine mount bracket, and then hopefully this engine will sit back, bring all this down into this area here, and then that will clear space for my radiator up the front, and it will also bring the engine sitting where it needs to be. So yeah, it is a good possibility that this thing does fit in here. All I got to do now is try and cut that bracket and try and mock fit it again, and hopefully she'll go in right. The only problem that I will have is my fuel tank. My fuel tank sort of sits just down here, which means that I'll have to relocate my fuel tank to the back and get a pump on it. And then as well as my carburetor, this bracket or this bar will be in the way, so I'll have to try and get some sort of drop neck to sit in here so my carb sits down there. It'll be very, very tight cram to get all this to fit in here, but we'll have a play and see how we go. Okay, so a bit of a progress update of what I've been doing on this thing. So I've done a lot of work off camera, but I've decided to go full send with the 200cc water-cooled engine. I've got some mock fit-ups, done some bracket cutting to try and get this thing to fit in. What I've had to do is I've had to cut the support for the steering column that comes up here so that I can widen this, because this was only about that wide beforehand. Now it's this wide so that I can fit the head in. Now these are running sort of straight with the frame, which is good. I've had to cut the existing motor bracket that's set underneath here. And now, having a look here, I've just mock fitted in the rear swing arm. And now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to try and mount the swing arm before I can do the motor, because I'm going to have to try and get the sprocket here lined up with the sprocket in the motor. And it is more important to get this swing arm centered than it is to get the motor centered for now, just because the swing arm is going to determine where my wheels sit, and I need those wheels to sit perfectly in line with the frame. For radiator, because this is a water-cooled engine, I'm going to have to try and fit a radiator in the front here. That shouldn't be a problem. It is going to be a bit of an interesting fitment, just because this radiator is going to have to sit underneath here. So I'll just put the camera down quickly. Okay, so that's how the radiator is going to have to sit in here. Very tight. My exhaust will have to lift up like that, so I have just enough clearance for this radiator to sit in the way. All in all, this is a very tight fit. I don't know how it's going to work, if it is going to work, but it's worth a shot, I think. Right, I'm going to get back to wrenching. Okay, you might notice that the quad is looking a fair bit different. I've done a fair bit of work since I last recorded, which means a lot of stuff has sort of changed. The reason I haven't recorded is because it's been a lot of sort of head scratching work, trying to just figure out how to fit everything. But pretty much, we got the engine in there now. Got these engine mounts welded, or just tack welded in there. Battery cage will sit right down here. Having a few little problems trying to fit the radiator in now. I think for the radiator, I did have it originally welded in here, but I forgot that this steering column shaft runs right where my radiator was sitting, which means that the radiator had to come out. So now the plan is to cut these out so that my radiator can slot in flat like that and sit just on here. That should clear everything and solve most of my problems. Coming around to the back, I've got the rear shock mount tack welded in the top there, and then I've also got the swing arm bolted into the back. And then right at the front again, we have the new swing arms in. Got the ball bearing swing arms and the bigger brakes. Still just drum brakes, but that should work. And then we've also got adjustment on these control arms, which is a big plus. Hello. So yeah, coming together slowly, except it's a lot of head scratching work. I will do another update in this next shot, just because I'm gonna have to do a lot more head scratching in order to get all of this to work. Update time, right? So pretty much most of everything that's going to go on the frame has been tacked on. Still have to do a few things, such as the bracket to hold the steering column top mount. Just got to bend and fabricate a piece to come in here, and I'll weld that and tack that up, and then I'll have steering back. Right here I've got my shock mounts. In here I've had to do some modification to this bottom swing arm. This mount now hangs underneath the swing arm. I've had to do that because my radiator slots in here, up on that face, which means I've had to drop my top mounts a long way down in order to fit that. And with them being a long way down, I've had to push the lower control arm down. But that's alright, that should work. Okay, so I've welded majority of what I can from the top. All I've got to do now is flip it around so that I can get to the underside of everything and then weld from the bottom. So far it's coming around alright. Still got a lot of welding to go. I think I've been welding for about an hour or two now, so yeah. Very slow going, but we're getting it done, which is the main thing. So yeah, I'm gonna keep welding. Okay, so we've got the whole frame welded up. Everything that I've just added and modified has all been fully welded up. The welds aren't the greatest, but they're pretty good. Hopefully they're strong enough and won't break off. That's the main point. Now all I've got to do is add some cross bracing to this frame. Like for example, I've had to cut away old bracing in order to make stuff fit. So what I've got to do now is come back and add more bracing. Like this one here, I'll just come and put a new bracing across there, and then where the frame cracked beforehand, I'm gonna brace that up, put like some sort of diagonal cross brace along there to there. Same on the other side. Just do a few cross braces where I think is necessary to stop the frame from cracking again, and then it should be ready for a cleanup. We'll grind it all back down, make it look nice and professional, give it a paint, and then we'll be moving on from there. Okay, so we got majority of the frame grinded up, got all the sort of bad finishes off sort of grinded. It's not perfect, but it's alright. I think this frame is going to need to be sandblasted because there's a lot of stuff that I can't get with a wire brush and it needs to be cleaned up properly, so I might have to take this for sandblasting, we'll have to see. But yeah, that's pretty much the frame done. Now we have to start cleaning up parts and starting to put it back together, so yeah. Okay, there we have it. Frame is all sort of grounded up and together. I decided to go ahead, put the front control arms and the rear swing arm on chuck the wheels on and put all the suspension in to see what the suspension is like, make sure it just all fits. Back here, firm, but it's at the same time there's no engine or anything on this, so it's going to be a bit firmer. Front is even more firmer, but that's alright. We want a decent firm suspension so that we can tackle some jumps without it all just collapsing in on itself. Hopefully the frame holds up to those jumps. But yeah, I think that's going to be the end of this episode. In the next episode we'll be sandblasting and restoring all the parts, including the engine, doing the wiring harness, all the other bits that need to go back on, and then we'll be assembling the thing. And then the episode after that, we might actually get to take this down to a track or something and give it a run for its money. So yeah, if you enjoyed it, please give a like and maybe consider subscribing. Really helps the channel along, helps me keep doing projects like this. So yeah, until next time.